Welcome everybody to the Simplifying Modern Technologies Information Seminar with question and answers. Just so you know, nobody's getting paid to do this thing. We're not selling anything. There's no financial kickbacks or sponsorship. We don't intend to promote any brands. If we do, it's just for information purposes only. So all the information on this one is just being presented for information purposes only. To start off with, we're going to be covering USBs and memory cards, which are SD cards. There are two types of USBs. There's USB 2, which is transfer rate of read-write speed of 480 megabits per second, and there's USB 3s, which is up to 5 megabits per second, or 5 gigabits per second, which is actually about 10 times faster than USB 2. We also have SD cards or micro SD cards also. There's differences in types in read and write speed, as well as physical space storage is in gigs. So check your device to make sure it has the correct read-write speed as well as the gigabit size. So if you go to the shop to buy them, just make sure you match the one they give you, the one you need that matches your specifications. Just make sure that you do back up your SD cards periodically, because some SD cards do wear out from time to time and they get corrupted and they don't work anymore. So just remember that every now and then back up your information, your data on your SD cards. So you want maybe 2 or 3 backups just in case one goes faulty. And like I say, just check your product information instructions for your specifications. Here's an example of an SD card. Don't worry about the brand. I'm looking at the two things I want to look at. One is saying it's 32 gigabit, as well as where it says C4. So it says the 32 gig tells you how much memory, and just to the right of the 32 gigabits, it's got a little C with a number 4 in there. That tells you there's a read-write speed of number 4. If you've got something that needs faster read-write speed, then that's not the right SD card for you. See, this one, it's got at the bottom right-hand side, just keep in mind it's got a HC on the bottom right. That stands for high capacity. This next one, you'll see on the bottom left underneath, you'll see it's got the 16 gigabits. That's 16 gig SD card. It's also, you'll see it's got a HC on there, which is high capacity. And it's got a little U on the very far right-hand side. In the middle, it's got that little U with the number 1 in there. And right down the bottom on the right-hand side, it's got class 10. So that's telling you it's a U1 micro SD card as well as a class 10 micro SD card. Their values are the same. That's the read and write speed. This one you'll see, it's got a U3 on the bottom left-hand side. It's also a 64 gigabit micro SD card. And you'll see how on the right-hand side in the black area, it's got micro SD XC for extended capacity. It's got a V30. So we'll get into those things. We'll show you what they are. When we're looking at SD cards, you notice there's a few different types. If you look on the left-hand side column, you'll see SD, SDHC, and you see on the bottom left, SDXC, which is SD card high capacity, and SD extended capacity. Now, if you go to the right-hand side of where it says SD card, we've got SD. SD is on the top row is up to 2 gigabits. So any memory cards up to 2 gig is just a standard SD name. Where you got SDHC on the left-hand side, if you go to the right-hand side of this chart, you'll see where it says high capacity, which means any memory card, any SD card from 4 gigabits all the way up to 32 gigabits. So if you've got an SD card that's either one of them, up to, or anything in between, which is a 4, 8, 16, 32 gig, that'll be a SD high capacity, HC type of SD card. And SDXC, which is on the bottom left-hand side, If you go to the right hand side, you'll see in the same column, you'll see extended capacity, which means anything over 32 gig up to 2 terabyte SD cards, that's extended capacity. So it's not 32 gig, but over 32 gig, up to 2 terabytes. If your memory card has anything in memory in that size limit, then it's an extended capacity. Now you'll see on the rows, you got full SD, mini SD, micro SD, and SD card capacity. So that's basically a full SD is the size, the old standard big sizes. Mini SD cards, which are the smaller ones, and then what a lot of phones and cameras take these days is the micro SD. If you go and buy a new SD card these days, more than likely most of the time it's going to be like a micro SD card size, physical size, but you'll get a little cradle that you can actually put into it, the micro SD card into, which makes it look like a full-size SD card, but you can slide it into. So you can put it into your computer. Here's a little chart here on this new page, so you can see and understand things a little bit better. You see on the left-hand side, the SD card sizes, standard size SD cards, mini SD, and micro SD, the physical size and the length and width. On the bottom, you'll see the definitions. Standard definition, SD, is up to 2 gigabits. High capacity is 4 gig to 32 gig. And extended capacity is 32 gig to 2 terabyte. So you got to make sure what capacity is your device with your phone, your camera, or whatever it may be. Make sure it has this, match the same capacity size. You don't go under, you don't go over. You need to be within the specifications of your instruction manual tells you about your products. On the top right hand side, you'll see SD cards class speeds. From the top to the bottom, you see it's class 2, class 4, class 6, class 10, and U, ultra. So class 2 has a read-write speed of 2 megabits per second. Class 4 is 4 megabits per second. Class 6 is 6 megabits per second of the transfer rate. Class 10 is 10 megabits per second. And U1, ultra high speed, is the same as a class 10. If we look at this other chart, we're able to see on the left hand side, you'll see it's got on the bottom there, the same symbols, C2, C4, C6, C10. And it tells you about the read-write speed, 2 megabits, 4 megabits, 6 megabits, 10 megabits. If you just go across light to the right, then you'll see that U1, and then above that U3. The U3 is 30 megabits per second. But to the right of that, you'll see this is V6, V10, V30, V60, V90. Once again, you'll see the V90 is 90 megabits per second, which means if you ever got a card with a V90, that's read-write speed is 90 megabits per second. You cannot get, for example, a V30 or U3, which is a V30, it's in the same column, which is 30 megabits per second, and think, I'm going to use that in my camera, my phone, whatever. But if your camera or phone says it's up to class 6, and you put a U3, the read-write speed is too fast, which means it's speaking 5 times faster than what your device can read or write to. Likewise, if your device says you need a U3, which is a 30 megabits per second data transfer, and you get a class 4, which is 4 megabits, or a class 6, which is 6 megabits, that means that card is too slow for your device. So if you mismatch, you'll get errors. It won't save, or you'll have some problems. Things will go faulty, and you'll think, oh, it's not working. But it's not necessarily not working. It's not working because you've put the wrong cards in there. So make sure you're using the correct cards. What you'll also see to the right of that is what type of video definition each card can be capable of. You'll see the standard, then you see up to the yellow, which is modern 4K. The green is full HD, and the blue is 8K. So if you've got 8K video, which is the one in the blue, you'll need obviously a V90, which is a 90 megabit per second, because there's a lot of data being transferred in 8K, which is 8,000 bits of information per second. Where if you're watching 4K, you can get away with a 60 megabits per second, which is a V60. You may also get with a U3, which is 30 megabits per second, but you wouldn't want to be using the green area for your 8K video, and you'll see your green one is for U3, Class 10 and Class 6. But if you've got that sort of Class 10, Class 6 sort of SD card, that's for your standard definition. So just make sure, just look at this chart and sort of match, well, what sort of video am I going to be recording? What type of card am I going to be needing? The C2, C4, C6 and C10 are going to be obviously too slow for your 8K video. So don't go buying those type of cards. Likewise, if you're going to be having standard video, which is the red one on the very far right hand side, your standard video sort of thing, you don't want to be getting a V90 or a V60 or a U3, which is a V30. You'll see how the data transfer is just, it's not going to match. The read-write speed is too fast for what you need, and vice versa. When we look at our SD card, this is what it has created like. You'll have tracks, sectors, and clusters. Your tracks is basically your information you're storing on your SD card. Sectors are little bits of area of your memory card to write information to. So as you'll see, the track of your information can cover a few different sectors. The green area is being clusters, where you've got a continual line of information, which is a cluster of information, a cluster of sectors. So if your memory card has problems, you may get errors on any sector. Those little, you can see where they're like the yellow areas. The yellow areas indicate the sectors of that SD card. And then just picture like a record player or a CD player, spin around so you can get the information, if that makes sense. So one sector of information, if that gets corrupted, you'll lose data on the area. So if your camera or phone is trying to write information to that one, and it writes over that sector, the sector, if that sector is corrupted, you'll lose the information there. Likewise, if you've got a few different sectors with corruption on there, then obviously if it starts writing over a few sectors, if your device writes over a few sectors, and it's not going to record it because those sectors are corrupted, then obviously you're going to have a cluster of information that's going to be lost. As you'll see where the clusters is a continuation of sectors joining together where you got information and so forth. So just make sure that you periodically back up your SD cards. And just remember, eventually you will need to replace your SD cards and USBs, because continually reading and writing to your SD card, it has a limited loop cycles, record cycles on your card, and eventually they do get corrupted and you'll need to replace it. So remember, periodically back up whatever's on your SD cards and USBs to another device, and also remember to replace them, because they will get corrupted and eventually you won't be able to use it and they will need replacing. Now the things that may use your SD cards, just make sure you get the right type of SD card, which is the read-write speed and the gig size that makes your particular product. So whether you're using a digital camera, a dash camera, a mobile phone, or some other video monitor, whatever it may be, or any other thing else for that matter, just make sure you get the right SD card for your device. Because now the things that may use your SD cards, just make sure you get the right type of SD card, which is the read-write speed and the gig size that makes your particular product. So whether you're using a digital camera, a dash camera, a mobile phone, or some other video monitor, whatever it may be, or anything else for that matter, just make sure you get the right SD card for your device, because all these different devices have different sort of formats, and that's the format is basically what type of language it writes or speaks. So here you'll see a list of different file formats. It's like different languages. So if you get a camera or a phone or whatever it is, it'll record in a different language. So some things won't recognize other languages or say file formats. Like computers will recognize a lot, but not everything. So some need different programs to recognize that particular format that your device is recording in. Just keep in mind, if you record your video file or audio file on one device, it does not necessarily mean another device will be able to play it. So if you've got a camera and you record something in that camera, it does not mean another camera or your phone or the computer is going to be able to play that one. Likewise, if you download a program to your computer and you record something on that video, that software, doesn't necessarily mean somebody else's computer or camera or phone will be able to recognize that file, because it has written it in a different language that only that particular program will recognize. And here's, like I say, here's a list of a variety of different sort of file formats that are out there. There are so many. Anyway, the other thing to keep in mind is if you do want to buy an SD card, just keep in mind, make sure you buy it from a reputable dealership. There are some places, for example, if you go to some places online or unknown shops or wherever that you're not aware of, that you've never heard of before, you don't know of them, they're just a fly-by-nighters, just keep in mind, be very cautious, be very careful, because there are a lot of people selling dodgy, non-original, corrupted SD cards online on different areas. So be cautious, make sure you trust the people you're buying it from, because a lot of people have been burnt by buying SD cards online from different retailers. Now, it's not to say all places online are dodgy. There are some that are dodgy, there are some that are legitimate. That's what I'm saying, just do your due diligence and make sure you buy from a reputable dealership online, if you are going to buy online, that one that you can know and you trust. Because the packaging will look real, the SD card will look all genuine and so forth, but they're counterfeits, and they don't, most of the time when they buy from unknown dealers, a lot of the times they don't work. So if you want to go to a brick and mortar, like your local shop down the road, and buy an SD card there, all well and good. Or if you want to buy from an online place, all well and good, but just make sure you're buying from a reputable dealer so you can trust the product you're buying is going to be the genuine article. Because like I said before, keep in mind, there are people online, the places online, not all, but some, who are selling what looks to be genuine. The logos, the picture, the cardboard, the packaging looks legitimate, but it's actually a counterfeit. And a lot of people are actually getting burnt by that one, by buying it, and it doesn't work. All right, that brings us to the end of our presentation. If you've got any questions or wants clarification about anything, just ask the questions and we'll see if we can help you out. God bless. Okay. Keep safe and healthy.